The Maple Leafs expected to be big-time players in free agency this year. Who could they be targeting? Let's get into it on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf Centered podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Big ticket up in Edmonton tonight. Big ticket up there in oil country. I wish that this was like a tie series, and I felt a little better about Edmonton going into this game. But man, is this ever do or die for the Oilers? Like there's just no hope in hell if they lose this game. I still think it's even a tough hill to climb, even if they win. But boy, it is really like do or die tonight for them Oilers.
I'm really, really hoping that this turns out better than the NBA Finals, which has been one of the more uncompetitive NBA Finals I've seen in a really long time. Like Boston's just absolutely smoking Dallas right now as we're recording this. Yeah, 91-70.
Oh, it was so close for so long.
Yeah, and then Boston woke up in the second half. They won they were 13. They outscored them 35-19. But I'm really, that's what I'm hoping doesn't happen in the Stanley Cup final. Like, I want this. We predicted the series to go deep, but like if they lose, if the Edmonton Oilers lose in Game 3, like imagine what the feeling's going to be like around Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, not great, obviously. And then they're sitting there. It's like we don't even want to play Game 4. Just give it to them. Give them the dang cup. Who cares about Game 4? I mean, they got to get at least one win. I do have faith that they'll come out flying tonight. I really, really do. And, there was weather issues in Florida, so I think they're a little late getting into Edmonton today. So is that going to screw with their plans? I don't know. Perhaps, that's possible, I guess. Giving Edmonton a little bit of a leg up. They haven't traveled, within 24 hours of a game where the Panthers will and are expected to land in Edmonton, obviously, for the game. But we'll see. We'll see what happens tonight. Could be a fun one. 8 p.m. puck drop. Panthers, Oilers, Game 3. To get into today's discussion about our beloved Toronto Maple Leafs, Elliotte Friedman, couple big reports coming from him. Let's start with the one that was on Nick Alberga show, friend of the show. Shout out. Leafs Morning Take. He was on that show doing an interview with them this morning, and he had a couple of interesting points that I think we can kind of, stem some conversation off of. And the first one was Elliotte Friedman talking about how he believes that the Maple Leafs want to add not one, but two big-time defensemen in the UFA market. So the Leafs not looking to add one guy, but they are looking for multiple big-time defensemen in the open market this summer. That's pretty comforting to hear because we've been talking about that, for years, and it sounds like the Leafs are ready to finally address it.
I think it's just also an admittance that they're admitting that they really need to upgrade the blue line. They can't go patchwork. They can't go bargain hunting. They need to go when was the last obviously TJ Brody, I think, would be kind of the last big signing they've had on the blue line. John Klingberg, that was a failure. That didn't work. I'm talking about one that actually panned out the way it was kind of expected to. I think TJ Brody was the last one.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it goes to show that the Leafs just haven't really made that a priority, right? They've gone and traded for Jake Muzzin, they got Jake McCabe. That's how they were generally trying to get that blue line in order. But because they haven't been able to draft and develop anyone of real substance lately. You have to go and find ways, and I understand that UFA market you're spending more because you're obviously in lockstep with other teams, but it's clear what this team needs, and there are players out there on the UFA market that can help them. And as Friedman said, it's not one, not two. There's like a bunch of guys Leafs can go and target.
This is a really good off season to be adding defensemen from the unrestricted free agent pool. Now, obviously, there's still a chance that some of these guys could sign. There's still a couple of weeks for these players to sign, but as of now, like, listen to this list of names that the Leafs, I guess, will have at their disposal to try and bring in here to Toronto. You've got Brady Shea, Brandon Montour, Brett Pesce, Matt Roy, Shane Gostisbehere, Sean Walker, Dylan DeMello, Chris Tanev, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Eric Gustafsson, Alexander Carrier, Nikita Zadorov, Jalen Chatfield, Matt Dumba, Matt Grzelcyk. Like, just some solid names, solid NHLers, varying from maybe not necessarily top pair, but like a soft 2, good 3, like a good 3rd defenseman, but like solid 2nd pair defenseman and, really, really high-end 3rd pair defenseman, which is really what the Maple Leafs are looking for, right? They're looking for guys who can fill into the top 4 and add 2 top 4 D-men to what they've already got now with Morgan Riley and with Jake McCabe. So it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, Dave, if there's any names that kind of stick out that you have a preference to at this point. Anyone trust your eye?
Well, Zadorov was an interesting one, but it's going to be he probably upped his value, his stock so much with how he played in Vancouver, especially in the playoffs. Like, a lot of teams are just like, we need that guy, and we are going to pay him.
I had a question though. When I hear Leafs want to add 2 big time defensemen, does Zadorov fit the bill for that, in your opinion?
Personally, no. Like, he's big. He is big.
Physically, yes.
Physically, he is. But when we're talking about, like, in Vancouver, he wasn't a top pair guy for them. He was lower in the lineup. Like, I'm talking about, like, you're gonna go after a Tanev. Like, that's top pair caliber. At worst, top 4. Even like a Sean Walker. Like, he was, I can't remember where he played when he got to Colorado. I mean, Colorado just had such a deep decor. It wouldn't have been like, even if he was playing low in lineup, this is because they were so deep there. But like, he's a guy that should be considered a top 4 option because that's what he was when he was playing for Philly. Like, you're going after a top like guy, for sure can handle the big minutes and play top 4, not someone that. Yeah, he's big, he's physical, but if you play him outside of what he's supposed to do, you're going to be sadly disappointed by the results.
Yeah, like there's going to be a team that's going to overpay Nikita Zadorov, I think. He's an overpay because I think size is going to be, I think, a hot commodity this offseason, which is something that Toronto wants to add to. But I think, guys like him, guys like Dakota Joshua, I think those guys are going to end up getting a hefty payday than what they typically do get. So it's not that I'm shying away from those guys and I don't want the Leafs to sign them if they can to a fair deal, then of course. But I do think that I would just say there's got to be some caution there when signing players like that to those big money deals for guys who are ultimately 3rd pair defensemen. That's what Zadorov is. For me, if I'm looking at 2 guys who do fit the bill for like 2 big time defensemen that I like in the UFA market, let's take a break. Let's take a break, leave you on a cliffhanger. We'll come back and I'll tell you who those 2 defensemen are that I think could shape up this D-man. Because I would tell you, Dave, you might be surprised because I'm having a little bit of a shift in mentality when it comes to building out this blue line. So I'll let you know all of that on the other side. It's Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA and NHL finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to puck drop with killer last minute deals, all in pricing, views from receipts, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets. They've got last minute deals where you can save to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events near you. They've got flash deals. They've got zone deals, all in pricing. And the best is their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues here with Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti on a beautiful Thursday here in the city of Toronto. We do have new podcasts coming out to you guys each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. You can find them wherever you get your on-the-go podcast from. And you can also find us up on YouTube as well, Locked On Leafs. Hit subscribe. Leave a like, leave a comment down below. Also, we're doing our mailbag tomorrow, so we need more questions for the mailbag segment for tomorrow. So leave us some comments down below, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck or at D_Morassutti. So the two defensemen that I think would be like absolute home runs, hit it out of the park if you're the Maple Leafs, Chris Tanev and Brady Shea. Those are the two, in my mind, home run signings that the Maple Leafs could make for this offseason. I know what you're thinking, but Brady Shea, he's a left shot defenseman. We want to add another left shot defenseman into the mix? Yes, that's exactly what I want to do, Dave. Because although Simon Benoit and Jake McCabe was a pretty good pairing, Benoit might not be a top four defenseman. Like, I think we all agree that he kind of played above his weight for most of the season. Do we want to go down that road again all next year? I don't know. Probably not. So if you can,
preference.
No. So like in my mind, if you sign both of those guys, let's just say, and you end up figuring it out with Timothy Liljegren. We'll talk about that in a minute, by the way. You got Riley, Tanev, Shea, McCabe, Benoit, Liljegren. Those are your six defensemen. I think that's good depth. You've got guys who can move the puck on each pairing. You've got guys with size who can hit, who can block, who can, who are going to be tough to play against on each pairing. I think that would be a real big upgrade. You add those two pieces in particular, slots Benoit more correctly into a third pair role. I think those would be just grand slam signings if they can get both of those guys wrangled in here at a reasonable cost.
Well, that's it, right? You get Benoit in the area he's in the more where he's more suited to be in the lineup, right? And I think with Jake McCabe, yes, Jake McCabe seemed to want to do a little more offensively, but that's not his game. Like you're not getting the best out of Jake McCabe if he's the offensive kind of facilitator on that second pairing. Go out and get yourself someone who can do that, at a better, probably, at a higher level. Brady Shea is an interesting one because I don't know what exactly Carolina's path is going to be, because obviously now they got to change in general manager with Tulsky taking over for what am I blanking on his name? Waddell, leaving for Columbus. Waddell. So I don't know where Carolina. If you're Carolina, do you consider that's a team there that also has to probably consider how much they want to bring back after another failed run there. So yeah, I mean Shea, that was an interesting move when they made it, and I think he's such an underrated defenseman. Like he was a
two-way guy too.
Yeah,
like he's good in his own end. He can move the puck, right? Like
good
he can
on the power play too.
Yeah. So I think he checks a lot of boxes. Like there's a lot of a lot of discourse around how like they have too many left shot defensemen. They need to get more right hand shot defensemen. And like, we were even talking about Mario Ferraro yesterday. It's like, but he's a lefty. Like Mario Ferraro, I guess, for all intents and purposes, he could kind of slide into that role too with Ferraro or McCabe and then slide Benoit down. So it does make sense if you want to go the trade route. But it might make sense if you get one, top pair right-handed guy to play with Riley, and then another second pair left-handed guy to play with Jake McCabe. I think that would make a lot of sense. If the reports are true and they are looking to go out there and add two big-time defensemen in the market, those are big time, right? Zadorov, that's a bit of a consolation, I would say. If you can get one of them, and now again, I don't expect them to get both. But that would be considered two big time ads compared to like one big time and maybe a bit of a consolation ad as a secondary piece. But we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. We'll definitely continue to talk about this stuff going forward. Now, Timothy Liljegren is an interesting player. We talked about him just a moment ago and, said, assuming that they get something done with Liljegren to bring him back on a third pair. We were also talking about him on yesterday's podcast. You can go check it out. We were discussing all of the pending RFAs. And Josh Cloak of The Athletic reporting that apparently talks have not really gone anywhere between the Maple Leafs and Timothy Liljegren. Does this worry you at all?
Not overly, just because RFAs are like the last piece of the puzzle in any off season. You go out, you see what you can do in free agency, and you don't want to worry about your budget for your RFAs unless you got like one of those like top RFAs you got to get done. But like that's not where Liljegren is, right?
I'm pretty sure Liljegren he's ARB eligible too. Pretty sure.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a tough sell for him because he spent some time in the top four, but he also spent time out of the lineup too.
Yeah,
right.
In the press box.
So I don't know where exactly he would go in that arbitration meeting and hope that he's gonna get a pretty sizable contract. Like, I just don't see it. And so there should be no rush to get that contract done. Go and see how much you can improve and add. And honestly, make life better for him, right? Like, I still think there's a role on this team for him, but I do think there are ways you can upgrade and even just help him by insulating him a little bit more than I think they've done in the past.
So we'll see what ends up happening there. I'll say that like there's also a possibility, I guess, that they could potentially be like shopping his rights maybe at the draft and if they think that Liljegren's just not part of the picture moving forward, they don't think that he'll be able to give them enough jam in a third pair role, what they kind of need from a guy to play a little bit more special teams, and so maybe they move on from him and move him at the draft potentially. Maybe that could be a reason why they're not really talking extension. They think that moving him as a pending RFA might be a little bit better, moving his rights at the draft. I don't know. Do you think there'd be much value for him around the league in that aspect? Like, what could that fetch you think?
Man, I don't think much. And it would pain me. It's like one of those where you trade.
25 years old, right shot. It's not a bad player.
No, but it's like, what would you like? I can't see a team offering more than a second for him.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking like a third round pick.
Second, like second would be. I would be like, wow, okay, like a team really likes him with a second. Like, but we're talking about a guy like it would really pain me to see them go and trade a guy. You use a 17th overall pick, and then get a third round pick because it just didn't work out. That'd just be. To me, that would just kind of magnify the failure that this team had to kind of put him in that. I mean, look, the player also has to perform, right? The player has to, meet the expectations. But I just think that you got to put the guy in a position to succeed as well. So I would prefer just do a 1 year, see if you can get him under the right track with Berube and then go from there.
I agree. I'd want to see if he could do something with another coach. Again, we talked about this a little bit more in depth yesterday, so you can go check out yesterday's podcast if you want to hear us and our thoughts on Liljegren and his future, I guess, as a potential Maple Leaf. But yeah, same sentiment. I think a 1-year deal is probably best for both parties, as opposed to shopping him at a cheap discount at this point in his career. All right, on the other side, Friedman dropped a couple bombs in that interview, one of which had to do with Mitch Marner. Let's get into that bombshell on the other side. It's Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Hey, Locked On Leaf fans, I want to take a moment to bring up one of our partners, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Leafs better than the current general manager? Well, your dream can come true, and this is the game that is most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, lead it to glory, hire the right coaches and staff, trade players, draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Leaf fan, you know that there is no off season. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve the team and their chances to win the cup. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play on the go as you want to and when you want to. By the way, the Locked On Network listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app. That's hockeygm.app, or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you. And Marner just is going to be a topic of conversation every day, isn't he? It seems like nobody can go a day without asking an insider his opinion. And then the opinions end up kind of turning into reports and stories. And all of a sudden, it feels like something that we've got to talk about. And the latest in the Mitch Marner update. I don't know what we're even going to call this, but apparently Elliotte Friedman thinks that Vegas could have interest in a Mitch Marner. What was this all about, Dave?
Yeah, it kind of initially I kind of looked past it when I listened to the full interview in context, because like every Marner update kind of has been sounding the same lately. And I had like looked back on because then it was showing up on X where people were talking about, does a Marner for Shea Theodore trade package make sense? And I got to thinking, I'm like, well, first off, how the heck is Vegas pulling off another big time addition up front after they just did the Hurdle deal, after they did the Jack Eichel deal? Like they've added so many big things.
Hanifin, and they extended him.
Yeah, I know Pietrangelo getting pretty decent change there too, and it's like, but Friedman kind of made it a point to say that's just how Vegas operates. If they see a player's available and they think that player is worth, they feel like they have a chance, they're going to do it, and they're not afraid to go out and even take off a part of the roster to get it done. So like, and Friedman said like part of the package was, you look at a Shea Theodore, Logan Thompson as part of a potential deal for Marner. And it got to me thinking, okay, like out of all the defensemen that Vegas has, Theodore has been one of their top guys for so long. Like he's an OG Golden Knight.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's a golden misfit.
That was the biggest mistake Anaheim made, was letting him go because they wanted to protect Vatanen from getting selected.
Yeah.
And that guy, he was their top number one defenseman, as you said, during the misfit era. And then they brought in Pietrangelo. That kind of changed his role a little bit. Then they bring in Hanifin. kind of changed his role a little bit. So it's like, are they? Is like, are they? And this is not the first time I've heard Shea Theodore's name potentially out there as well. Like they've been kind of talking about, is Shea Theodore gonna be around? And I'm like, sign me up. Like Leafs, like go and get this guy.
I don't get why though. Like he's a better defenseman than Hanifin. Why would you bring in Noah Hanifin, sign him to a long-term extension, and then trade away the better defenseman? Like that doesn't compute to me. I don't get it.
I don't get it, but if they're going down this route, might as well take advantage. Like if
that's a big boy defenseman. Like we're talking Leafs going big buck hunting for D-men. Like that's a big time addition right there. Left side shot, so like there's gonna be some finagling there.
But he does play the right side.
Yeah, but he does play the right. But do you want to have like two left shot defensemen play the right? I guess you could just slide McCabe back over to the left, I guess, and just go like Riley, Theodore, McCabe, sign Tanev, let's say, and that's kind of there's your top four there. I suppose that's possible too. Or you could, yeah, maybe that's the deal there. And then you're sitting there with a Wall Logan Thompson as your tandem, but I don't necessarily love, to be honest with you. Like Thompson's just as injury risk as Wall is, But
it's crazy because like at one point Logan Thompson were like, this guy's like a Vezina worthy goaltender, and then they bring in Aiden Hill, that kind of made that a timeshare, and then Thompson's injuries has been. There's a reason why Vegas had to go out and get Aiden Hill. It's because Logan Thompson couldn't stay healthy, Robin Leonard couldn't stay healthy. So you'd be playing with a little bit of fire there. But if you can go out and you can get a Shea Theodore, you go and do it. Like I've been such a fan of his ever since he went to and like you solve your power play issues there with him as well.
He's a tremendous player. He's a top pair guy for sure. Like he becomes the best blue liner in Toronto in God knows how long. So certainly that would be a massive upgrade to the blue line. And I think mainly, like, I don't know if there's necessarily interest on both sides of this happening, but I think it's more so one of those reports where it's like, Vegas is always in on star players, so it wouldn't surprise me if Vegas, calls on them and, A plus B, this could potentially be what they could be offering. Whether or not that deal ever ends up on the table for Brad Treliving to make, I guess we'll see. But I am starting to wonder if there's like an internal clock on a Marner trade. Do you think there's a clock on this trade, or do you think this is something that could be done post July 1st?
I think it can happen post July 1st. I don't even think teams are really even going to entertain it at the draft. I don't even think the Leafs are going to entertain it at the. When was the last time we saw a big time deal like that?
Timeout. Where's the draft?
I know it's in Vegas.
You don't think that if these two are talking,
if Vegas wants to do it, that would 1,000% make the most sense. But let's not forget there's three parties involved. The Leafs, Vegas, and Marner. Like, that's the one there. That's the caveat. But like, come on, if you're the Leafs and you go to Marner and you say, "Hey, Vegas is interested. What do you think?" Like, how could you say no to that?
I don't think he would. Honestly, I don't think he would say no. But would Vegas be interested in Mitch Marner? The way he plays, does that sound like a Vegas Golden Knight to you? Kind of. I mean, he's defensively responsible. It's always weird talking about Marner because he's defensively responsible, and then just for whatever reason doesn't play in the playoffs. It is quite bizarre when you sit here and bash Marner. It's like he's such a talented player. Any team would be grateful to have him on their roster, but I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. I to go back to the original question that I asked you, I do think there is an internal clock on this deal. I think that you've got to have something done, if not like draft weekend, like before free agency starts. I think if just because you want to know how much money do you have, you know what I mean? Like you got to know how much can I offer these defensemen? Do I have enough money to go after two guys? Can I go after two defensemen and a couple forwards?
True.
Because if you don't know what you're doing with Mitch Marner, and then all of a sudden, midway through the summer, okay, you strike a deal, you make a trade, then all of a sudden you end up with, I don't know, maybe $4 or $5 extra million in cap space when that deal is completed. Well, all the good free agents are going to be gone. You know what I mean? Like you won't be able to add those impact free agent players to help the team. You'll be getting the secondary, tertiary, type of guys, that third wave of free agents at that point. And so for me, it's almost like if Mitch Marner is still a Maple Leaf come July 1st, I think it's very likely that he probably ends up staying a Maple Leaf the rest of the summer. I'm looking at the draft and the couple of days after it as, the day to see something strike here for the Maple Leafs and Mitch Marner. Once you get past July 1, though, I don't know. Maybe like July 1, that money gets paid to him and then a deal comes through. Like just if there's a team who doesn't want to pay the bonus and they know they have it ready to go, and then it'll kind of go through and then they know how much money they have to start free agency. But I would say, yeah, the Leafs will want to know what the Mitch Marner situation is pretty early in this offseason, so they could use that money, I guess, appropriately and to the best of their abilities. That's my opinion. Did I persuade you?
You're persuaded. All that makes sense. It's just, it just seems like everyone, Marner's camp wants to take it through the year, which I don't know why. Like every other star player has wanted to get their contract situation other than Nylander.
The contract, yes, but a trade.
Yeah, I don't want to go through a whole summer of waiting for a Marner deal. If there's a trade happening, don't get it done. Like make that the first thing your first priority. I don't know why they would want to do it any other way. It's just, again, Marner holds so much of the cards in that it could just be a tough one to get done. As Friedman even said to start that, he says it's such a complicated deal to do. Like I don't like it gets underestimated how complicated it is.
How complicated could it possibly be? Come on, these people make it seem like it's so difficult to make trades. I've played NHL GM mode. I've played what's our new sponsor? Ultimate Hockey GM. Very simple to make trades. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah,
very simple. Very.
Mike does like 3 different trades. Rejected.
You should see the rejected pal in fantasy hockey, football.
I've heard about your fantasy football rejected trade, pal. I've got some.
Who could? Austin? Is it Austin?
I got a few people. There's a couple. There's a group of 5.
A group of 5. I don't even know 5 people. How's that possible? Anyways, well, we'll see what ends up happening. I think this won't be the last Marner update we get. Probably not even the last one of the week, because we got mailbag tomorrow. I guarantee you. There's already been a couple questions about Mitch Marner and what happens with him if he doesn't get traded. Should they sign him to a deal? Should they let him walk? Lots of discourse around Mitch Marner, obviously. So we can get into it a little bit more tomorrow. So just one more reminder, get your questions in down below, and also reach out to us on Twitter with your mailbag questions. I'll post something on Twitter too, asking people for some questions for the mailbag tomorrow. But that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck, at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.